We use renewables for about 40% of our electricity, Martin, which again is one of the highest in the Western world. We've got some of the biggest offshore wind farms in the world, and we're seeing some of those pictures now. We've got wave power, we've got solar power. But the reality is we still use gas-fired power stations for about 40% of our electricity as well. Why? Because gas can literally be fired up. That's where the phrase comes from. We can turn on our gas-fired power stations when the sun doesn't shine and when the wind doesn't blow, which, as you rightly say, is pretty often in this country. And the reality is that we've got 32 gas-fired power stations now. A lot of them are coming to the end of their natural life, and we need more gas-fired power stations because however much we use renewables, we can't always use them for obvious climatic and weather-related reasons. So we need what's called baseload power, power that's always there, power to keep the lights on, power to keep hospitals up and running, power to keep us warm in the winter, power literally to stop the lights going out and the world's fifth biggest economy crashing to its knees in a way that will have massive implications for investment and the lives and livelihoods of people in this country. And why is electricity in this country so much more expensive than many other Western countries, both for domestic and for commercial users? It is, Martin, because we've got such a high share of renewables, not the fact that we've got a high share of renewables per se, that could be really good news, but we've got such a high share of renewables before we've really solved the problem of how to store renewable energy, and with an absence of other power that can come in to fill that baseload need when we need to. Nuclear can't really do that, and our nuclear capability is rather low, certainly compared to the French. So we need gas-fired power stations because you can literally fire them up at a moment's notice when the sun isn't there, when the wind isn't there. The problem is, Martin, it's very, very, very expensive to keep gas-fired power station capacity literally on standby. You need whole power stations that are just sitting there, full of staff, full of capability. They need to be maintained. And by definition, they're not used that often, so they can't generate the electricity and the revenue to cover that cost. So that cost of those gas-fired power stations on standby has to be spread across all electricity prices in the UK. That is why electricity in the UK is so expensive. It's a combination of very high renewables and a lack of other baseload capability. That's why we need more gas-fired power stations. And gas-fired power stations, they're so much more environmentally friendly than coal-fired power stations or the use of oil. Gas is seen by many people as a semi-green fuel. It isn't nearly as green, of course, as renewables, or it's not as green as nuclear, though some environmental campaigners have major problems with how we dispose of nuclear waste. And I understand why, though other environmental campaigners actually champion nuclear. But look, we are now seeing some reality injected into this net zero debate. I'm all in favour of moving away from fossil fuels. There has to be a better way than digging stuff out of the ground. We're smarter than that. We're cleverer than that. But even the government's own Climate Change Commission, which is like the legally empowered green conscience, a campaigning entity within the heart of government with an awful lot of influence, even they say that by 2030 and even by 2050, we'll still be using a lot of oil and gas. So that's why we need these gas-fired power stations. I applaud this, not because I don't believe that we need to move away from fossil fuels like oil and gas. I do. But I applaud it because this will stop the lights going out. And if the lights go out, the debate about net zero will become very, very, very nasty indeed. And those net zero targets will be completely junked and consigned to the political margins. So this is a dose of reality from Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. But I have to say to him and the rest of the Tory front bench, what took you so long?
Indeed.